Hi everybody, welcome to Pool Extreme, presented by SkyMember. This effect was created by Rorrison1 back in 2016, and finally, after 3 years of refinement, we're finally here to share this with you guys. My name is Francis from Singapore, and I'll be your guide for this effect. On behalf of everybody here at SkyMember, I'd like to thank you for supporting us with this project. But before we go in any further, I'd like to remind everybody to please be very careful, especially when you're dealing with the metal cans. If you're under 18, please remember to seek parental guidance. That's all for the introduction. Let's dive straight in. So how does it work? It may sound very complicated, but it's actually very simple. This piece can be removed and is held on with a magnet. This is how it looks like. There is a piece of magnet here, and there is a piece of magnet inside here. That's what's holding it in place. To set it up, all you have to do is just push it in. Be very careful of the sharp edges here. Push it in, it will pivot at the back of the can as it hinges all the way inside. Now, to keep it inside, you need a magnet, which I have on my thumb here. This magnet, all you have to do is just push this tab in. Remember, again, it's hinging on this side of the can. As it goes in, all you have to do is just place this magnet in place, holding everything in place. Again, be very careful with the sharp edges. And you're set. To trigger it, all you have to do is just move the small piece and the effect happens. So now that you know the secret, the next step is to install the magnet on the inside of the can. Another reminder to please be very careful of the sharp edges here, and if you're under 18, please seek parental guidance. Now, if you think about it, this effect has 4 phases. First phase, you pull off the tap. Second phase, you make this vanish. Third phase, it restores back onto the can. And the final phase, the 4th phase, is where you do your cleanup. So let's take a look at how we do every single one of them. So that was the basic effect of Pulled Extreme. How does it work? Come and take a look. Remember that this gimmick is hinging at the back of the can. So all we have to do is just hinge it all the way in and let it rest on the flat side of the can. And in order to make it appear, all we have to do is just rotate the can to an upright position. So how to make this work properly? First, we need to create the illusion that we're taking off the tap. In order to do that, position the can parallel to the ground. This way, all you have to do is just use your thumb to push the tap so that it hinges, and finally land on this side of the can. Remember, you have to keep the entire can parallel to the floor. So to take a look at it one more time, all you have to do is just use your thumb and push this in. Now, of course, the spectator will be able to see this, and to hide that, use your fingers to cover this side. So you probably want to start here. Get into your position, use your fingers to cover, use your thumb to do the dirty work. And now, the tap is resting on the bottom side of the can. Pretend to take the tap off, and you're almost there. All you have to do now is time the throwing of the tap with turning the can upright. Done properly, it looks like that. So you've just watched the performance video. This is what we call the advanced handling. And the reason we call it that is because the spectator gets to see the tap being pulled off of the can. Now we have 2 options for you. The first option will require quite a bit of work, but it's going to be worth it because the spectator gets to pull the tap off themselves. The second method is a little bit easier, but you will have to pull the tap off yourself. Let's get into it, shall we? Okay, now let's take a closer look at the 2 options. The first option, you actually physically install the tap back onto the can, which would then allow you to offer it to the spectator for them to pull it off. The second option is because there is a magnet that allows you to just place it on top of the can, which creates the same setup, but you will have to remove this yourself. And in the next video, we're going to explore how to build both of them. So to set up the can, push the tab into the mouth, making sure that it rests at the bottom of the can. Take the magnet and let it attract by itself. And you're set. Okay, so you have watched the video where you learn how to build the two options, and we assume that you've decided which one is best for you. Say you go with option number 1, where you can offer the can to the audience where they can pull the tab off themselves. These are the things that you need to take note of. First, make sure that the opening of the can is facing you, because you wouldn't want the spectator to be seeing the gimmick that's inside the can. So again, make sure that the opening is facing you. However, when you offer it to them this way, you're going to have to cover the magnet on this side. So it's a simple matter of just using your finger, cover the magnet and offer it to them this way. You also notice that the tab of the can is already slightly pulled up. This way it's easier for them to reach it. You can also offer the can this way, which gives a rather open kind of look to it. But again, make sure you cover the magnet so that everything looks fine. That's option number 1. What about option number 2? For option number 2, you already know that the tab is just held on into place with a small magnet. Now, for this option, which is option number 2, you will have to pull the tab off yourself. But to create the illusion, to make it even better, these are the things that you need to take note of. First, you want to create the illusion. Oh, very important as well. Make sure that they don't see the inside of the can. So just like the option number 1, make sure that the opening is facing you. Next, when you remove the tab, you're going to want to try to mimic how it looks like in reality. You wouldn't just take it off like that. What you want to do is to mimic the action of pulling it off like this. And then finally, when you pull it off, you create the sound. With all of that put together, it will really look like you just pulled off the tab. That's it. So now that we've learned how to pull the tab off, what do we do next? Of course, is to make this vanish. Now, there are many ways to make a tab vanish. There are ways that involve sleight of hand, and there are ways that involve techniques that allows you to do complete vanishes. For this instructional video, we will share with you a few ideas, starting with the first one. Now, at this point, it's very important to take note that the mouth of the can and the angle that it's facing is very, very crucial for this effect, because you wouldn't want them to see inside. But don't worry about that for now. We will explore that in more details in the later part of this video. Now, I'd like to explain to you how that performance you saw was done. Now, obviously, I palmed the tab after I pulled it off. Notice again when I pull it off to create the sound. And it's done using the fidget grip. Now, we can't go into too much details of how the fidget grip is done, but I can show you, if you're not familiar, what it is. It is basically palming. It can be used to palm a coin, anything small, in this case the tab of the can, and you hold it on your index finger. Now, of course, this way the audience can see it. So how do you hide it? Using the other 3 fingers, you put it in front, and that's how you create the illusion of a very open vanish. Now, to get it into position after you toss it into the air will require you a bit of practice, but it's going to be worth it. So give it a try. Toss it in the air, catch it, move it into position, and in one swift motion, you make it vanish, and you trigger the gimmick, and you're done. So the second option that we have for you is going to be a lot easier. You've already seen it in our demo and our trailer. It involves putting it in your mouth, like David Blaine. So you would take it off and put it into your mouth. Now, here at Sky Member, we do our very best to take care of you So we want to point it out to all of you that if you use the version that has a magnet, it is not recommended to put it into your mouth. Yeah. So if you have the tab that doesn't have the magnet, you can do this version of using your mouth. Pull it off, or get your spectator to pull it off. Take it, put it in your mouth. But when you put it into your mouth, you place it underneath your tongue. And just like David Blaine, you aim for the mouth of the can and you blow, at the same time triggering the gimmick. It looks like you just blew it on. Now, needless to say, with the tap underneath your tongue, it's not recommended to keep it there for too long. And please be very, very mindful. We will not be responsible if anything happens to you because of your own negligence. For the third option, if you're seated at the table, you can do what is known as lapping. If you're not familiar with that, please explore. It's a very, very useful tool. But let's say you're not at the table. Here's what you can do. You can actually still use the techniques that is taught through lapping. And it's about misdirection. It looks something like this. You pull off the tap, bring the attention to the tap, and for a split moment, you bring attention to the can, and you come back up and you do that. So, how was that done? Well, basically, I just dropped this onto the floor, or in this case, onto my sofa. And that is done using misdirection, which is very similar to lapping like I mentioned just now. Now, let me try to explain to you as briefly as I can. The way it's done is you need to understand a very important concept which is called the offbeat. And the offbeat is basically when you create attention by where you look. Because I'm looking at the tab, you are looking at the tab. The audience will be looking at the tab. And for a split moment, I shift my gaze onto the can, which gives me a great opportunity to move this out of sight. And like they say in magic, out of sight, out of mind. So now that this is out of sight and my attention is on the can, it allows me a lot of opportunity to just drop this onto, in this case, my sofa. As I come back, notice my attention comes back to my hand, and I pretend through my gaze that the tab is still in my hand. It's not there anymore. And all I have to do is just mime, throwing it back on, triggering the gimmick, and again, you're done. So other than the 3 ways that we just shared with you, here are a few more ideas. Here's the first one. Once you have the tab pulled off, place it back on top, and you do this. So how was that done? With something sticky. In this case, I'm using a double-sided tape. You can use other products as well, let's say Octopalm or some kind of a wax. And of course, you can use what is known as a PK ring. A PK ring, if you do not know, is a magnetic ring that will very, very easily just attract the tab that has a magnet on. That way you can create the illusion that somehow the tab has disappeared and make it go pew, back on top. For this section, we're going to explore handlings that's going to involve the spectator's hands. We have prepared 2 versions for you. Let's take a look at the first one now. Now that you've seen the first version that involves the spectator's hand, let's take a look at how it works. This version is initially designed for social media. And the reason we say that is because other than everything else that you already know, by the way, this version uses the tab that has the magnet. It also will require an additional magnet at the bottom here. Now with this, you won't be able to bring this out into the real world. But if you want to, we have 2 options for you. You can use something that is known as a foil tape. It is a tape that is metallic in nature. So if you cover the bottom, it will look very, very normal. Second way is to take this magnet and to install it on the inside. So by now I believe that you already know how this works, but nevertheless I will go into the details and also explain to you a few tips about audience management. So how do you begin? So first you ask the spectator for their hand. And once they offer their hand, it's a very important point to grab hold of their hand and move them a little bit and place it at a particular spot. Why do you do this? You do this so that you kind of subtly show the audience that I would like you to cooperate, and it also subtly and subconsciously tells them that I'm in control. As opposed to if you put your hand down, as opposed to if you ask for their hand and you just leave it there, they're going to move around. And you don't want that. So grab their hand, move them into a particular spot, and they will most likely stay there and cooperate. Next, you do the handling that we've already taught. Pull the tab out. Remember, this is the tab that has the magnet. Place the tab onto the spectator's hand. Now you can put it on the palm, you can put it on the fingers, but I prefer the fingers is because this area here is more jutting out as opposed to the middle of the palm, which is concave in. It's going to be harder for this to reach the magnet. So if you place this on the finger, it's going to be much easier. So once you pull it off, put it onto their fingers, you move the can onto my right hand and get ready by placing your thumb onto the magnet. Next, grab hold of their hand, and on the downward action, what's going to happen is that this tab with the magnet is going to get attracted to this magnet. It disappears, and at the same time, you trigger it, and you're almost done. But because this involves the spectator, they would definitely want to see the can and check the can. And you can't just hand it out to them, but you can subtly prove to them that the tab really is on by doing this. Not only that, you can turn it around and subtly ask for them to do this. Now it's very important to ask them to do this. By miming the action to them, they will do the same. And it really looks like it's on. And that's the first version. So you've just seen version 2 that uses the spectator's hand. How does it work? Let's take a look at it. If you remember the very basic version where we keep the can parallel to the ground and we do this move that mime taking out the tab, it's the same thing, but this time it involves the spectator's hand. And here's the sequence. First, you ask for their hand, and then you ask them to position their hand this way. You place the can onto their hand and then come forward with your right hand to remove the tab. Now, in order to execute this move correctly, you do have to make sure that you move their hand to this position. What I'm trying to say is that you want to keep this side of the can as parallel to the ground as possible. And it makes sense to move their hand here because you do want to reach the tab. So now that you're here, spectators right in front of me here, I'll use my fingers to cover as I use my thumb to execute the move. I've mimed taking out the tab, and now I release with my left hand while my eyes are looking here. So the attention is all here. I will move it to my left hand. Notice my eyes is tracking it all the way. So all the attention is here. The audience is also anticipating, what the hell are you going to do? Now is the time when you hold on to the can here. The reason you need to hold here is because you're going to move their hand, and by moving will activate the gimmick. At the same time, you do this, and you're done. You can now ask them to let go. You can let go, and everything will look very, very fair. So this is the version where you pull off the tab, place it on the mouth of the can, and with just a shake, it restores itself. How does it work? Let's get into it. It uses the gimmick itself. And this is a good time to remind everybody that to be very, very careful with your gimmick. It's very well made, it's very rigid, but if you handle it wrongly, it's going to break. Here's what you need to remember. Do not ever push the tab forward. If you push it forward, it's going to snap. However, you can push it backwards. And that's how you create the illusion of loosening the metal and finally pulling it off. Once you have the tab off, be very, very mindful that you never ever show this part that's protruding. You want it facing you. Once you have it pulled off, you would then hook it onto the can. But as far as the audience is concerned, it's just resting on the can. And once you're here, you present it to show it to them, and just with a shake, it restores itself. In this segment, we're going to go into more details about the angles. Basically, what you want to be aware of is that pretty much any angle is fine. Because again, what you don't want is them to see inside of the mouth and see the gimmick. The only time it is dangerous is if you are facing straight on and from a 90-degree angle to the 45. This is where the danger zone lies. Because anything more than the 45, less than the 45, it's pretty safe. And of course, towards the left is safe, towards the right is safe as well. So just be very, very mindful that on the 90 to the 45, if you need to go this direction, we would advise you to go towards the side. Either side will be fine and everything will be okay. Of course, the safest is when you have the mouth facing you. But the problem is that they can see the magnet. But that can be solved very easily. Just use your finger and cover it, and everything is very safe and you have nothing to worry about. So this is the explanation for the haunted tab. As you can see, it requires an invisible elastic thread. And if this is the first time you're dealing with thread, this is what you need to take note of. You want to anchor both sides, and we are using a blue tack, which is very, very useful when you're dealing with thread. And what you want to do is to take one of the ends and thread it into the hole of the tab. Now what we're trying to do here is to create a loop. So if you take the two ends now and squish them together, you have effectively created a loop. To find the opening of the loop, you will go close to the tab and you would separate the two threads. Let me place it on the table. There you go, that's the middle of the loop. Place your thumb into the loop and you can stick this ball of blue tack onto your thumb and you're almost there. Now what you want to do is to, just like in the previous handling, place it onto the mouth of the can. So here's the situation right now. The tab has a loop around it, and the thread is going all the way back to my thumb. All you have to do now is animate. And when you're almost done, you give it a slight shake and it attaches itself. That's it, we're at the end of our instructional video. Once again, thank you very much for supporting us with this effect. Now, Pull Extreme is a very easy to do effect. However, to bring out the best of this effect, please do not forget the subtleties that we've shared with you. If you have any questions, please get in touch with us. We'll be more than happy to help you. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, I'll be very happy to hear from you too. Once again, my name is Francis. Hope to see you again in our next release.